Peace upon you. We all know trains and love to ride them, but many of us do not know who invented that train, and in this video we will get to know the inventor of trains. But before we start, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel until all new arrives. 1. About the train's inventor. George Stephenson, dubbed the father of the railroad, was the inventor of the first commercial locomotive, as well as the inventor of the railroad. George Stephenson, or the father of the railroad, is a British inventor whose pioneering work in civil and mechanical engineering led to the construction of the world's first intercity railway line using steam locomotives. Stephenson embodies the perfect story of the transition from poverty to wealth, as he was born into a family with very little income to become a self-made engineer who not only revived the transportation industry, but also energized the great industrial revolution as he built the world's first railway line using steam trains. Apart from building the first railways, he is credited with inventing the most famous steam locomotive, Rocket. He invented the railroad gauge, now known as the Stephenson gauge, and became the global scale for most railroads. He is also responsible for developing the safety lamp for miners, which has greatly reduced the risk of explosion in the mining industry. 2. The beginnings of George Stephenson. George Stephenson was born on June 9, 1781, in Northumberland, to his parents, Robert and Mabel Stevenson. His father worked as a firefighter with a very low salary, so education was a luxury for Stephenson and he could not afford it. He started working at the age of 17 and spent the money he earned from his job on studying at a night school, where he learned reading, writing and mathematics. 3. The achievements of George Stephenson. In 1801, Stephenson began working as a laborer at the Calerton Black Coal Mine, and the following year, he married and moved to Wellington Wharf, and worked as a railroad worker for additional income, as he learned to repair shoes, watches and cut clothes. After the birth of his son, he moved to work at the Keeling Roth mine. In 1811, he became famous after he had successfully repaired the pump engine at the High Mine, and soon became an expert in steam machines. In 1814 he created the first locomotive, using the idea of the Blenkinsop travel engine. The Bletcher engine was designed to transport coal on ancient Keeling Roth roads, which were used to transport horses, equipment, wagons, etc. before the railroads came into existence. The first steam engine was capable of transporting 30 tons of coal at 4 miles per hour. After Stephenson spent most of his life in the mines, he was no longer aware of the danger of explosions facing the mining industry, due to workers using live bullets in pits filled with flammable gases, so he invented the safety lamp in 1815, which uses a cylinder with small air holes to reduce explosions. After the success of the first locomotive engine, Stephenson invented 16 additional locomotives, and in 1817 built the 6-wheel locomotive for the Keilor-Neckantroon Railway. In 1820, he was entrusted with the construction of an 8-mile railway line on the Houghton Colliery Railway, to be the first electric-powered railway line without using any kind of animal energy, and the success of the railroad led to his invention of the well-known iron rails. As a result of the success of the aforementioned railroad, he was appointed as an engineer to build a 25-mile railway linking Stockton and Darlington in 1821, and his son Robert helped him in the project. Stephenson built the first passenger wagon for the Stockton and Darlington Railroad that carried industrial lights on its inaugural flight, thus becoming the world's first public railway to operate on a steam locomotive. During that time he invented the first railway scale of 4 feet 8.5 inches, which became an internationally certified scale. As a result of his accomplishments, he gained wide fame and was chosen as the head of railway engineers in Liverpool and Manchester, and he and his son won a competition for the best and most powerful locomotive in 1829, so that the Liverpool and Manchester railroads were opened on September 15, 1830, in the presence of many important personalities, including the Prime Ministers of Waterloo and Duke Wellington, and 8 locomotives have been used on this track. As a result of the successes of his projects, He gained great fame and worked as a consultant in several railway projects at home and abroad. Excavations carried out to build the railway also led to the discovery of coal reserves, which greatly enriched it. As for the period between 1828 and 1848, it was one of the most prosperous periods in Stevenson's career, as he was inundated with requests to build numerous railways around the world. 4. George Stephenson's most famous sayings. Railroads will reach places where people have not paid for it. When union becomes possible, competition becomes impossible. I mentioned the principles on which a safety lamp could be built to several people before Mr. Humphrey Davy got here. 5. The personal life of George Stephenson. Stevenson had a lot of affair before his marriage to Frances on November 28, 1802 in Newburn Church, where they had 2 children, Robert and Fanny, who died in infancy. His wife died after suffering with tuberculosis, and he married Betty Hindmarsh on March 29, 1820, but they had no children, and my house passed away in 1845. He married Ellen Gregory for the 3rd time on January 11, 1848, at St. John's Church. 6. The death of George Stephenson. Stevenson died on August 12, 1848, of pneumonia and was buried at the Holy Trinity Church in Chesterfield. As a result of his notable contributions, his native Northumberland has been converted into a museum, and many schools, colleges, institutions and aid societies are named after him. The Bank of England £5 coin carried his picture between 1990 and 2003. In 2002 he was named to the BBC's list of the 100 greatest British personalities. 7. Quick facts about George Stephenson. His first job was to take care of a herd of cows, and he was later assigned to build a 13-kilometre railway in 1820, the first in the world that did not rely on animals for transportation. In 1829, George Stephenson and his son Robert designed the famous rocket steam train, which appeared in the opening day celebrations for the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. However, the death of a local parliamentarian in the world's first rail accident overshadowed these celebrations. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway was the first railroad in which all trains operated on a fixed schedule. 8. You will find the latest news about George Stephenson, videos and documentaries about George Stephenson, and the sources of information that I mentioned to you in this video in the description. In the end, we hope that you liked the video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel until everything new arrives, and bye bye.